Some years ago, I found myself taking a seminary course on preaching. This class was led by Bill Schultz. Bill is a former president of our denomination's Unitarian Universalist Association, and if you have ever heard him speak, you know he is quite the orator. As part of this course, each student had to present a sermon to the class and get feedback from the other students, and of course from Bill. I vividly remember one of my classmates sharing with me that he was incredibly nervous about doing this. He had never preached before a crowd before. It was his first year in ministerial formation. When it came his turn to offer a sermon, he gave us a heartfelt and deeply moving talk about living with despair and not trying to avoid it. It was a good and well-delivered sermon, and his words connected on a strong emotional level with everybody in the room. When it came time for critique and for comments, Bill Schultz waited for others to share. And then he paused and he said to this guy, he said, "I liked your message. It was very honest. But I have one question for you. Where was the hope?" This young seminarian replied, "Well, I don't think that I want to give people hope. I want to leave them wondering and questioning." To which Bill quickly responded, "My friend, you have to get one thing straight. If you are going to be a UU minister, you must understand that we have one job, and that is to always give people hope." Those words have stayed with me almost 2 decades later, and I think of them often, always giving people hope. They come to mind every time I am headed to Baptist East to visit with one of you who is recovering from surgery. They echo in my brain as I'm driving downtown to take part in a public protest or planning some remarks for an interfaith vigil. I especially remember Bill's words when I'm preparing for Sunday mornings here at All Peoples and trying to figure out what in the heck am I going to say to them this week. All this coming month here at All Peoples, we are exploring the theme of choosing hope. Hope will be the focus in our connection groups, in our chalice circles, in our family ministry activities for children and youth, and in some of our Sunday morning discussions as well. This coming Tuesday night, Russ Funk and I will be leading a conversation about how hope drives our church's work for justice and liberation, and we hope you'll come join us for that. Now, while choosing hope is our theme for the month of December, if you think about it, it has really been our theme all year long. Hope is what we strive for every Sunday, heck, every day. And that is because, as Unitarian Universalists, choosing hope is what we do. We cannot be people of love and compassion, of generosity and pluralism, of justice and interdependence, without a whole lot of hope in our hearts. Now, as your minister, I have to admit to you that I sometimes find following Bill Schultz's direction about always giving out hope to be a tricky proposition. In our Unitarian Universalist tradition, we do not necessarily promote hope in the promise of a heavenly afterlife, or teach the belief that some supernatural force will protect us or heal us or rescue us from ourselves without our active participation and our cooperation. While we UUs are hopeful, for sure, we are also pragmatic. We find truth in our lived experiences, and we insist that our faith must follow the facts and not the other way around. For the most part, if our hope is to be real, it must be more than just nice words from the pulpit. It has to be provable, observable, debatable. It must address our doubts and not dismiss them. And that can make finding hope and choosing hope a definite challenge sometimes. Now, I think this means that we need to try to be mindful about what we are hoping for and learn to see hope not as a destination or an outcome, but as a process in and of itself, a transforming activity that we have a role in bringing to life. Often when I imagine to myself, what do I hope for? I immediately move into thinking about big picture items. You know, those large aspirational hopes like world peace or an end to war. But you know, wanting all people to stop killing each other may not be the most realistic thing to hope for. The vast history of human civilization seems to say that violence is a part of our nature, and many of the conflicts in this world are well entrenched and often inescapable. Perhaps I should place my hope more specifically, like hoping for a future where more of those in power are people who see war not as a solution, but as a sad and regretful final resort, one to be avoided whenever possible. If I hope for that, there is something I can do to make that happen. I can go out and I can get involved in supporting folks who are running for public office, folks who are committed to peaceful ways, helping them get elected. Having new and different leaders is the only way that the suffering of the people of Gaza and the Ukraine and Sudan will come to an end. Not to mention the occupation of our American cities by ICE patrols and National Guard troops. Hope by itself will not change that. But hope does play a role when it moves us, when it makes us get involved, when it makes us be activists. Changing how we identify our hopes can be essential if they are to survive. I remember back in 2019 and 2020, after my mom was diagnosed with sarcoma cancer, and she was undergoing months of chemo and radiation treatments. My brother said to me one day, he said, "I sure hope she beats this." Now, I hoped that too, but I was not sure if I should place too much hope in that outcome. Despite many ups and downs, by the summer of 2020, the time came for my mom to enter hospice care. And at that point, I said to my brother, I said, I guess we can no longer hope that the cancer will go away. And we must simply hope that she does not suffer too much, and that we can be there for her and with her and take care of her until she passes. And that's just what happened, actually. And it was such a blessing. While I miss my mom so much sometimes, I'm also incredibly grateful that she died the way she did. And that experience has made me hope that when my time comes, I can go as peacefully, as comfortably, as surrounded by love as she did. We carry with us all kinds of hopes as we navigate our days. I can hope that it doesn't snow right before winter fair because we want to get those people in here, right? I can hope that my flight will be on time and not delayed at the Muhammad Ali Airport. I can hope that the U of L Cardinals will beat UK in football which, by the way, they just did last week. And please do not tell my Aunt Nancy that I said that here today. She's a big Wildcats fan, so. I can hope that there actually is a heaven. And maybe somewhere and somehow, my husband will get to see his twin sisters again, or I'll get to see my mom again. We can hope for stuff like that. There is no harm in it. But it is important to acknowledge that those are things that we ultimately have no control over, things that are ultimately beyond our influence. Hoping that we have the grace to live through them, one way or another, is probably a better approach. Recognizing that it may be wiser to not spend too much of our spiritual energy on things like that is probably the best choice. But there are many circumstances, many situations when our hope can be a powerful motivator, an essential ingredient in our quest to live by our values and promote kindness and love in this world. You know, it was 70 years ago, last Monday, that Rosa Parks was arrested on that bus in Montgomery, Alabama. 70 years ago. Now, we often mythologize this event as simply some act of individual courage. We make Rosa into a hero. But in reality, her actions were part of a much larger movement of liberation, going back to the Underground Railroad, to the abolitionist pioneers of a century earlier. And each decade since that day in 1955, every generation that has followed has risen up in their own way to demand justice and an end to racism. From the Rainbow Coalition to Black Lives Matter to the protest for Breonna Taylor. The hope that someday our society will be fairer, will be better for everyone, is a hope that will not die, a hope that continues to enliven and inspire us all. Hope is that nagging voice in our hearts that insists that we remain engaged, that tells us, stay connected, refuse to give up, keep insisting on change, even when the deck is stacked against us. Hope tells us to play the long game, to seek out the goodness and the godness in ourselves and in others, even when it is hidden and hard to find. It's still there, hope says, waiting to be unleashed at any moment. Hope reminds us to live in deeper and truer relationship to this broken and battered world, because there is so much beauty out there too. Hope is fragile. It can be fleeting, but it is incredibly powerful. The acclaimed English philosopher and poet G.K. Chesterton wrote these words: "In the great struggle for existence, it is only from those who hang on for the 10 minutes after all has proven hopeless that hope begins to truly dawn once more." I heard an author quote Chesterton's words the other day on National Public Radio as I was driving home in my car. And I thought to myself, wow, that perfectly sums up where I feel so many of us find ourselves these days, hanging on to our hope when all has proven hopeless. But in doing so, in remaining steadfast in our faith and true to our Unitarian Universalist values, no matter what happens next, no matter if it is 10 minutes after all is hopeless, we witness to that larger truth that Chesterton observed. The truth that real hope rises once more out of our insistence that it has never gone away in the first place. As I said earlier, in this church, our version of faith is not defined by supernatural affirmations or aspirations that we cling to in desperation. Our faith has historically been nurtured by observing and engaging with the potentials and the possibilities of our lived experience. Today, we don't need to do anything more than just look around us. Look into the faces of those nearby. All we have to do is that, to know that our hope is real. Hope is here. Hope is growing. Hope is worth choosing again and again and again. I'm going to close today with some words by Howard Zinn, the great historian and World War II veteran. In his memoir, which was titled "You Can't Be Neutral on a Moving Train," Howard Zinn wrote this: "To be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also a history of compassion, of sacrifice, courage, and kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this context and complex history will determine our lives. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. But if we remember those times and those places, and there are so many of them, when people have behaved magnificently, that gives us the energy to act, and at least the possibility of sending this spinning top of a world in a different direction. And if we do act in however small a way, we do not have to wait for some grand utopian future. The future is an infinite succession of presents. And to live right now, as we think human beings should live, is defiance. It is a reaction to all that is bad around us. Simply doing that in itself is a marvelous victory. So may it be with us, and amen.